Now, I am so honored to bring up our first speaker, who I've been actually personally dying to meet. We've been talking now for quite some time. She is an incredible inspiration. She has been an angel and venture investor for quite some time, accomplished author. She actually recently contributed to a chapter in the Crowdfunding One-on-One book. And I cannot wait to see her presentation. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you Judy Robinett.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm very excited to be here. Flew in from Park City, Utah last night, so no snow here on the ground. That's good. I want to also tell you briefly a little story about my grandmother. I determined early on it was very good to have money for women. My grandmother became a widow in her late 40s and worked for Union Pacific for a laundry until she was 71. Now, she loved her job, and it was good. Then my parents got divorced, and I watched what happened to my mother. So it became really critical early for me to figure out how to become financially independent. And I had a hard time figuring that out. It wasn't until I was giving a speech at MIT that I picked up a Wall Street Journal that had some research that was done that said there's only 5 ways you become financially independent in America. Number 1, be a doctor. Number 2, a lawyer. Number 3, inherit it. Number 4, marry it. I knew those first 4 were out for me, and number 5 was start a business. And I thought, oh, how hard could it be? I've got 2 degrees, I'm a hard worker. I got a $1.2 million SBA loan and started a franchise restaurant. And I quickly found out. I almost went bankrupt. I actually dreamed I had committed suicide. So that has always been really important to me. Now, every day I see deals, and every day people call me with money to invest. I have been asked where to put up to $1 billion. People think there's no money out there. I think a couple of years ago, the GMP was $47 trillion globally. So I'm going to talk to you today about new funding strategies, and a lot of this is experience I've learned the hard way. Y Combinator is one of the more successful incubators here, and Phil often says there's only 2 reasons startups fail. Number 1 is lack of a customer. Number 2 is lack of money. So you need to get customers, it needs to be repeatable and scalable. And as you can see, I think these guys are from my hometown in Franklin, Idaho. They're really distraught they can't get money. So this is truly a difficult problem for people getting money. And so my focus today is going to be sharing some insights that I've learned the hard way. Number 1, where is the money? Number 2, who's got it? Number 3, how do I get it? And more importantly, fatal mistakes. The very first one is people pitch the wrong investor. When I talk to VCs and angel groups, they'll often say 80 to 90% of the pitches we see aren't meant for us. They're in the wrong place. The second one is people don't get a warm introduction. Everything happens in this world by your network, and we'll talk about that a little more. The third one is understanding the investor's mentality. People are just so excited about their product. They go in, and isn't my Kool-Aid great? Don't you want to drink it? The investor is wondering how they're going to get their money back. So an exit strategy is absolutely critical. So this is the capital life cycle from the very beginning of your idea. All the way over here to maturity is the exit. So the most critical thing is to have a funding strategy from the beginning to the end. I often meet people and they say, if I just had $500,000, if you'd write a check for $500,000, we're going to make $1 billion. I'll just get 3% of the market. And it doesn't work that way. That's called building a pier rather than a bridge. So what happens when you run out of money? So investors want to know that entire frame. So I'll tell you a little story. I recently was introduced to a couple of young mothers down in Lehi, Utah, and they were avid Farmville fans. And I mean, these women were just great. Well, they had a certain, game with 7-Eleven, and if you got a cup and you bought it and you could prove that, you could put it in your Farmville game. Well, they figured out nobody could get these globally. And so one of them had a relative that worked for 7-Eleven and bought cases of 7-Eleven cups. They sold them online for $29 each, and by the week's end, they were making $20,000 a week. They went and got IP. They figured out how to do a virtual market. A friend of mine lined up several $1 million for them. They hit the valley of death. And the reason they hit the valley of death is because they didn't know what they didn't know. Even though they had IP, brilliant idea, some proven concept, they needed a truth teller. They needed to be able to trust people. So I often tell people the way to avoid the valley of death is to make sure that you have truth tellers, someone that has your back and also has your future. So this is the funding ecosystem, billions and billions of dollars. The first bar is friends, family. They used to call it fools. But really it's love capital. It's people who care about you, and they're going to give you the money. This is estimated to be going north of $300 billion with crowdfunding. That's going to be a tremendous increase. The second group is the angel investors. This one has also radically changed. So now we have franchised groups that go not only coast to coast, but are also globally. I don't know how many of you have heard of Golden Seeds. We'll talk about them in a minute. Tech Coast to Angels. Some of the angel groups now are hiring people to do due diligence, and they're starting to look very much like the VCs, the venture capitalists. And the venture capitalists are changing. The National Venture Capital Association says there's now less than 560 from an all-time high of about 1,200 VC groups. So those are dropping, and now we're seeing the birth of micro VCs, small VCs. I sit on the board of Illuminate in Menlo Park. Cindy, when she started, people said, can't be done, you've only got 5 million. She has a company in her portfolio at $1 billion. She's now in the top 10% tier of all VCs. And we have corporate venture capitalists. There's now 700. So everybody from IBM to Intel, Amazon, even smaller companies have a branch because they're all looking for innovation. Family offices, which aren't on there, 2,000 to 5,000. So now we have family offices, and Candace Klein is here from Soma Lend. Candace got her first money from a family office. This was unheard of a few years ago. Most people haven't even heard of family offices. Last week, I got a call from a foundation saying, I need to get in on this and not lose. But the most important thing to remember here is these people are all syndicating now. Golden Seeds is doing deals with, Reid Hoffman, who's a super angel, who also has a fund. They have treaties with 120 angel groups across the nation, and VCs. So they're syndicating. So there's lots and lots of money out there, although these are changing, and it's going to make it easier for women who historically have not been able to get venture capital. So the first funder is you, and the most critical thing about here is how much money do you really need? Now, most people are startled to find out 50% of the companies on the Inc. 500 were started with less than $25,000. Next is your friends, family. I've changed it to strangers because this is what crowdfunding will do for us. And I'll tell you a quick story. There's a gentleman in Utah, Kirby Cochran. He took a company called Headwaters to $1.7 billion. And he invests in what he calls flyers. And so 10 to 15 deals he sees a year, he'll just give them $10,000 and calls them a flyer. And he says due diligence is really a combination of art and science, and at the end of the day, you really can't tell. So as someone looking for money, it's very good to focus on passion, get them interested in the art side of that equation. So most of you know Fred. He's here in New York. I can feel crowdfunding coming in the air. He invested in Twitter, Tumblr. I've got this I'm going to pass out and show you. There's a young man in, again, Provo, Utah, started making a Crux 360. They're now sold all over the world. It turns your iPad into a mini computer. Very nice. He went to lots and lots of people, and people said, oh, it's me too. Who would want it? Here, I'll pass it around. And couldn't find any capital. And he had a Kickstarter campaign. He's raised $227,000. He now has both angel groups and venture capitalists coming asking for money, or asking to invest, to give him money. Howard is a VC, also a hedge fund guy. You know, one of the things that I'll bring up is people were starting to use social media to invest way before crowdfunding started. One of the famous stories is Naked Pizza. Mark Cuban was one of the early investors, and he was concerned that they weren't getting other interest, and he said, start tweeting, start telling people this is organic pizza, this is what we're doing. They started tweeting, and 35% of their funding came from tweets. People wrote back, hey, this sounds really cool, could I invest? Much what Dara was saying. So the next level is angels. This one is really critical. So what will generally happen is you start yourself, and then you get some friends and family, and then you'll go through angels. Kauffman Foundation shows 90% of high potential companies are funded by angels. 90%. I was asked to vet a little company out of Park City, Utah called Skull Candy when they were at year 3, 250,000 cells, broke, had no books and no board. And the angel groups had initially turned them down, and no one was interested. They said, well, you know, it's not scalable. It's a Me Too product like the one you're seeing, and we don't really see an exit. This year, Skull Candy went public with a market cap of $550 million. So it's really important to keep going. It's also really critical to identify an exit. Angels typically like an exit out 4 to 5 years. The growth in the US angel groups has been phenomenal, and this is also happening internationally. I recently gave a speech in Cartagena, Colombia, to 600 folks in their entrepreneurial ecosystem. Met with several of their angel groups, and they're saying, wow, we need to get as many angel groups down here as you have in the United States. There's also now 1,000 incubators and accelerators, and these are all groups that will help you. So why do these people invest, particularly angels? It's because of that top number. Now, it is high risk, but it's high reward. Angels typically look at having 10 deals in their portfolio, and they're looking for 2 exits, realizing some they'll break even, some will fail. Typically 3 to 4 failures. Amazon.com. Now, Tom got a call from a lawyer friend saying, I've met this great guy called Jeff, and he's got this really terrific idea. And so Tom was kind of interested, and he started doing some due diligence. He got in contact with a local venture capital group who had looked at it, and the VC said, this isn't going to work. You know, there's this little competitor out there called Barnes & Noble, and they've got bricks and mortar. They're going to really be difficult for you. But he kind of liked the idea. He thought, how many times have I gone to a bookstore at Christmas and I couldn't find what I needed? Tom's $100,000 turned into $26 million. My favorite story is The Body Shop. Ian ran a garage in London. And Ian's $10,000 turned into $26.5 million. And these aren't typical, but this is certainly what everybody'd like to have a piece of Facebook or something. And I'm not sure about Facebook now, but people are looking for these kind of things. Recently, I often see various companies, but one was in the drink sector. And I shared with them a story that I heard that Vitamin Water had gone to Coke early on and said, don't you want to look at us? And Coke just laughed and said, no, you know, you'll never get there. 3 years later, they purchased Vitamin Water for $100 million. The board of directors chastised the management team and said, you know, you boys, girls, you need to get in these deals earlier. So what we're seeing is there's a drive from corporations, from government, from everybody looking for innovation. Everybody's looking for deals. So Golden Seeds is, Gwen is a friend of mine. She was the forum leader at Golden Seeds in San Francisco. This is specifically targeted to help women who have had difficulty getting capital. They're the third most active angel network of all angel networks in the United States, fourth largest, 250 members. So this is one group that is from one coast to the other. They've screened 1,200 companies, participated in 96 rounds of financing, invested $34 million, focused on technology, consumer products, and life sciences. I joined them to learn how to do due diligence. They're very, very tough. They're as tough as any VC that you would go through. And due diligence, by the way, is considered the most important work that an investor looking at your deal will do. Statistics show that if you only put 20 hours in due diligence, your return is 1.1x. So you get your money back a little. If you put in 60 hours of due diligence, it goes up to 7.1x your money. So this is what Golden Seeds looks for. I just pulled a few things out of their documents. And the most important thing is always management. Does the team have expertise in the industry? Have they done it before? Number two is the market. How big is the market? Can we really get our money back? What is your business model? How are you going to make money? I tell people free is not a business model. I recently saw a young company, and I was really excited. Usually people come and they tell me how great and how wonderful, and then I ask them what is called the deer in headlights question, do you have any revenues? They said, yes, 300,000. I almost passed out. That's better than Skullcandy was doing at year 3. After looking at their financials, however, I discovered that they had invested heavily in Groupon to 300,000. And so those are called vanity metrics. You know, they weren't true about their financials. And the last one is money. So you have to have a good management team, a market business model, and then money for 2 areas. What is your complete funding strategy? And number 2, what really are your revenue projections? And always be honest, tell the truth. So how hard can due diligence be? This is one of 9 pages from Tech Coast Angels. And it doesn't have everything. I just pulled a few things like your social security number for background checks. Probably the most important thing on here is the showstoppers. And often these are red flags. And sometimes these things can be fixed, but investors are going, why bother? If there's hair on the deal, I can find a deal every day. All kinds. Harmful pre-existing, agreements. Uncle Bob put in money, but there's no signed documentation. Is it a loan? And are these people going to come back and sue us? Unsettled management team issues. People are fighting over who's going to run the company. Inadequate IP protection. Excessive current liabilities. We see a lot of people come with a lot of debt, and they expect that the money being invested will pay off the debt. It doesn't. People don't want to pay off your debt. They want it to get specific milestones. And then inappropriate use of proceeds. I had a friend that put $1.2 million into a company, and all the management team bought Beamers and Porsche. So those are showstoppers. So venture capital. Only 3% goes into early stage investment. And while everybody talks about how critical this is, the group to target is the angels. Venture capital, the minute you take VC money, your typical exit is out 10 years. So think about how long it is you really want to run your company. Basil Peters is the expert on this, wrote a book called Early Exits. The average exit for a company is 30 million or less. That's the average. And so it's good to plan carefully. Angels, 4 to 5 years. VCs, average 10 years. So where do you find these people? What is most critical is relationships and connections. This is Ray from Kleiner Perkins. Whether you call it a network, it helps to know someone. So relationships and connections. The next most important thing is understanding strategy and what we've been talking about, your social capital and social media. First, you need to know who you need to know. Oftentimes, I find people aren't familiar with the ecosystem. That's why I call it looking for love in all the wrong places, pitching to the wrong people. Jeff, I spoke with a few months ago. It's really interesting. He says, if you can't figure out how to get to me, you probably can't figure out how to call a customer. Zip, zero. So really critical to focus on networking. So some of the things that we're learning from Kickstarter and their stats, that people think that, you know, they're going to post a campaign, there's all these people out there just anxious to invest in you. The reality is it's an 8-to-1. There's only one person off the website that invested compared to 8 people that came from the external, which means it's up to you to bring your own crowd. 8-to-1 ratio. Now this is Matt Hewley. Matt is back to 84 campaigns on Kickstarter, and he doesn't even go to the website. He finds out on Twitter. And he said he can tell based on your Twitter leads, how many people are following you, whether or not you'll be successful in your campaign. Now, Kickstarter is a little bit different than Rocket Hub. So Rocket Hub, about half have come off of their website, and then half really to targeted PR efforts to whatever your technology. So Brian, who did the Crux 360 that's going around, he told me it was absolutely critical to get the PR and get the social media up and going. So those are really critical lessons learned. Got to have the external, your responsibility to bring the crowd, and PR. Guy Kawasaki, excellent book, The Art of the Start. You know, go out there, get connected. There's all kinds of ways to do it. You're here at this meeting, go to other meetings, apply to incubators. There's 1,000 of them. Attend pitch events. I think Candace pitched to 26? 27 competitions, and I think won all of them. And that's how she got in touch with Family Office and her first angel investors. Some secrets here is be sure to tell your story and talk to strangers. You know, before I walked up here, I was a total stranger. People only spend 3% of their time talking to strangers. Your current network typically is friends and family. You need to expand that. And a magical tool, and it doesn't matter with your personal life or your business, is I have what I call the 2 golden questions. When I refer someone to talk to someone else, I say, your job is, number 1, say, do you have any other ideas for me? Number 2, who else do you know I should talk to? Now, I've only lived in Utah and Idaho. I'm like 1 by a factor of 10 to Bill Gates, to Obama, Fred Soros, and that's how I did it. It's exactly how I did it. My book will be out this year on that. So Springboard, I noticed, is one of the sponsors. I'm an advisor in Springboard, a wonderful organization for women. They have screened also thousands of companies. $5.5 billion has been raised, thousands of jobs. Wonderful organization. ASTIA is on the West Coast. These are entrepreneurial kind of support organizations that help you develop your pitch, figure out how to say a value proposition in 1 sentence. Make sure that you have the confidence when you're speaking so that you can, when you get to Golden Seeds or another angel group or even a VC group, that you're in command of the situation. Kelly is here in town. Just founded a very well-known incubator. This is a good one for women. It's early stage, launched for mobile technology, providing guidance, feedback, like all the other incubators. Most of them now have funds that are attached to them. And of course, all the investors flock to these because guess what? They're looking for good deals. So you have the people that have got the money trying to figure out what on earth to do with it, like my friend that called me with $1 billion. And then you have this group. So all of these inefficiencies, are an opportunity for you to really figure out the ecosystem of who you need to talk to, how can you get to them. And, finally, the last thing I'll say, the most important skill, and Heidi Rosen, who is a partner at Draper VC, said women just don't know how to ask. They need to develop the skill of the ask. I tell people you must date first before you get in bed. You have to build the relationship. People must know you, like you, and trust you. Tell the facts. You come across as much more honorable if you say, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here, but this is what we're seeing. Don't tell me if you just get 2% of the China market, well, I'll make billions of dollars. I know you're an amateur. And avoid desperation. Don't oversell. One of my favorite angel investors is Jean Hammond. She's done over 60 investments, including Zipcar. Says no one's going to write you a check the size of a house without knowing you, liking you, and trusting you. This is one of my favorite ones. Nobody is born knowing any of this stuff. It's okay that you don't know it. You'll always have to deal with some fear. And keep going. So key lessons, the money is out there. There's money everywhere. Get involved with people and organizations that can help you. Be bold. Fear is always an issue. A few months ago, I met with Barbara of Shark Tank fame. She sent me this book with a pink bow. I thought it was kind of cute. And she said, when I met her, every day on my way to $1 billion, I worried I would go bankrupt. So you just manage the fear. You don't have to know it all. And let me show you one final thing. So recently I was giving a speech, and some young women came up to me with this. And I thought, well, it's cute. I can see it's got a clip, and it has a magnet. And their question to me was, do I really have to have an exit? And I said, well, yes, people want their money back. And what have you got? So they show me this. They tell me they're crowdsourcing it internationally. A little girl came up with this idea, and you open it up, and it turns into a dragon. They're already in Hallmark stores. They've just inked a deal with the same people that did the Beanie Baby. Initially, they were turned down. Now they have people chasing them. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to speak with any of you. I do have a meeting at Wall Street at 10:30, but I'm going to leave business cards. I'd be delighted to help any of you any way that I can. Thank you so much.